Hi there, Chris Chapman, Moto Legends. Today I want to talk to you about a new helmet from the German brand Schuberth. It's a helmet called the Concept. And please don't forget, if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. Like the E2 adventure helmet, the Concept is another variation on the C5 platform. The rationale for it is twofold. First, it's cheaper, and it's quite a bit cheaper. We'll explain all the things that Schuberth has done to make it less expensive, but given that the starting point is that of a high-end premium helmet, the Concept, even with all the sacrifices that it represents, is still probably a better flip lid than any of the other non-Schuberth or non-Shoei helmets on the market. The second reason why somebody might go for the Concept over the C5 is that it is not set up to take Schuberth's integrated SC comms units. And what that means is that the helmet is going to be much easier to fit your own comms onto. In truth, of course, part of the thinking behind the Concept from Schuberth's perspective is that it will make the helmet much easier and cheaper for the police, who will always want to install their own hardwired comms. Now, some people simply hate the whole idea of integrated comms. They feel that they are being stitched up in some way. And although there are sound safety reasons for integrating a comms unit into a helmet, we can, I suppose, understand their gripe. A lot of these objectors, of course, don't like integrated comms because they want to transfer their existing systems to their new helmet. And it has to be admitted that it can be quite difficult to install such a system onto the C5 because the covers for the integrated comms get in the way. Well, that won't be a problem with the Concept. What's more, the German company has gone to great lengths to make it easy to install an aftermarket system into the helmet. The Concept is the same shape as the C5 and comes in the same two shell sizes. One of the most significant differences between the C5 and the Concept is that the shell of the Concept is a fiberglass one rather than the composite one that the C5 has. Fiberglass shells are cheaper, but obviously even plastic ones can pass ECE 2206. So the Concept is still a very safe helmet, and as safe, I suppose, as any fiberglass helmet. But fiberglass shells are softer than composite ones. Now, soft shells absorb the energy of an impact very well, but not being as strong, they do not dissipate the energy of an impact quite so well. They're also not as resistant to penetrations and to cracking, and therefore they do not perform as well or as well in situations where there are multiple impacts. The Concept has the same multi-density EPS and the same removable comfort liners as the C5, and what that means is that we can custom fit the Concept in exactly the same way as we can the C5. Of course, what has to be acknowledged here is that we cannot custom fit any Schuberth helmet to the same extent that we can a Shoei. And that's because, slightly bizarrely, Schuberth's internal pads can only be changed on 3 out of the 6 helmet sizes. The outer Class 1 optical visor is the same on both helmets, although disappointingly the fitted pin lock is a 70 and not a 120. I suppose we had thought that Schuberth had learned its lesson on the C4. But the Concept is an exercise in reducing costs, so we can't really have any issue on this. It can only be expected, really, that Schuberth would go for a cheaper pin lock if they're trying to save money. On the Concept, you get the same drop-down sun visor. The AROS system that stops the helmet coming off in an accident is also unchanged. There's only one chin vent as opposed to the 2 on the C5, and the brow vent on the Concept has just 2 settings, open and closed. There's no in-between position as there is on the C5, and there's no exhaust vent at the back of the helmet. Now, I've already stated that the Concept won't take Schuberth's integrated comms, but what is impressive is the lengths that Schuberth has gone to in order to make it easier to stick somebody else's comms onto the side of the helmet. First thing though, you will probably not be able to clamp a unit onto the shell. If you tried hard enough, you might be able to, but adhesive pads are the way to go. Helpfully, Schuberth have put a hole into the helmet skirt to allow cables to be channeled into the helmet. The only thing we would say is, in our view, the hole could have been a little bit further back, but it's still workable. Inside, there's lots of room between the EPS and the skirt of the helmet for earphone and speaker cables. There's a conduit for the microphone cables, so you don't have to put them behind the cheek pads. There's also a very neat port for the microphone boom. The bottom line is that Schuberth has worked really hard to make installing somebody else's comms as easy and as neat as it could possibly be. Of course, one of the problems with sticking a comms unit onto the side of any helmet is that it will generate lots of extra wind noise. And that's a bit of a shame because otherwise this would be a pretty quiet helmet. Put it like this, if you bring your concept helmet into us complaining about how noisy it is, once you put your own system on the side, don't be surprised if our reaction is one of raised eyebrows. The thinking behind the concept is sound. A slightly down-spec'd C5 at a much reduced price. And the savings, it's got to be said, are not nothing. You'll save £120 on the helmet in gloss black or silver, you'll save £140 on the other plain colours, and you'll save £150 on helmets that come with graphics. Now, we've talked a little about the people who want to use their own comms, and for these people, the concept may indeed be the way to go, because fitting an external comms onto the C5 can, I've got to say, it can be a bit of a ball ache. Of course, there are also people who think they will never use comms, and for these people, probably it doesn't make much sense to go for a C5. But at the same time, it should not be forgotten that the concept does embody certain sacrifices. A less protective fiberglass shell and a less effective pen lock and poorer ventilation being prominent amongst them. Also has to be said that the concept is a noisier helmet than the C5. At 60 miles an hour, the C5 registers 85 decibels of noise according to Schuberth's in-house wind tunnel. The concept registers 87.5 decibels. Now, that may not sound like a lot of extra noise, but decibels, of course, are measured on a logarithmic scale, and 3 decibels signals a doubling of sound intensity and a halving of the safe exposure time. An extra 2.5 decibels, therefore, is not an insignificant increase in the intensity of noise. And so our view is that if you're not somebody who wants to stick a comms onto the side of the helmet, you have to ask yourself whether the savings warrant the sacrifices. Or is it the sacrifices warrant the savings? I can't remember, but I'm sure you get the point. But there's another consideration here. With a full-fat C5, you are perhaps building in a little future-proofing. The C5 is self-evidently a better helmet. But with the C5, you give yourself the opportunity to change your mind and go for integrated comms at a later date. Buy the concept and you won't have that option. As ever, these things are never quite as black and white as they first appear. If you'd like to see more flip-lid helmets, if you want to see more helmets, visit the website motolegends.com. If you'd like to learn more about the concept, then click on one of the links on the screen. Sometimes they're up there, sometimes they're down there. That will take you to a dedicated section. Now, when you're there, you can check out the spec of the helmet in a little bit more detail. You can check availability, and obviously you can buy a helmet if you want to do that there and then. When you buy from us, we try to make the process simple, straightforward, and risk-free as we possibly can. There's no delivery charge on any item of protected wear that you buy from us. Returns are totally free, and what's more, we give you a full 12 months in which to decide whether you do want to return something to us. We have the best price promise in the business. Now, many years ago, John Lewis was rightly famed for its never knowingly undersold price promise. Well, we go one stage better. If you can find anybody selling anything that we sell at a price that is below ours, we will beat that competitor's price by a full 10%. Now, there are a few terms and conditions associated with what we call our price beat. Nothing particularly onerous, I assure you, but if you are going to attempt to price beat us, I suggest you go over to the website and check out what those terms and conditions are. Now, if in the future you'd like to receive bulletins from us about new products, then go to the website. At the top of the page, there's a piece of script that says newsletter sign up. Click on that. Within seconds, you'll be in business. In future, you'll receive our email bulletins. If, however, you prefer to get your information videographically, that is to say in this form, we'd be simply delighted if you wanted to become a subscriber to the YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking on the button below. Finally, I'd like to make mention of our fabulous little shop here at Moto Legends. As I say, it's got a small footprint. We're based about a mile from the centre of Guildford, a mile from the railway station. But even though the shop has a small footprint, we have more than £4 million worth of stock arranged over 3 floors in a warehouse that is attached to the shop. And technically that makes this the second largest motorcycle apparel shop in the UK. But we'd like to think of ourselves as far more than just the amount of merchandise we have here in the building. We're all about service, we're all about personal fitting. If you want to check us out, visit Trustpilot. We have the highest 5-star ranking in the business. And when you come to see us, we'll serve you only the finest Italian illy coffee, or we'll serve you proper Yorkshire tea in a proper teapot. And who knows, if you're really lucky, you might even get to sample one of our delicious motorcycle-shaped shortbread biscuits. Anyway, this has been Chris. I hope to talk to you again soon.